alleviate some of the problem, or is it the same, or has it got worse? So, I mean, these are questions that obviously would enter into any decision that we made.
Well, the other thing is too, whatever alternative we're choosing, we need to make the public aware that, again, we're displacing it from here and it is gonna go somewhere else. So, it's heading out to Concord Street or.
And of course, we have no control over 62.
No. Other than we'll be diverting traffic onto it. It's definitely gonna have an impact a negative impact on 62.
Mr. Yule?
With regard to closing New Street or making it a one-way, do they need our approval to do that? Can that be? Sure. Okay.
Again, my initial reaction to that, if we're going to have a truck exclusion, there's only a half a dozen houses there maybe, why inconvenience the residents to that degree if we're gonna be excluding them anyway?
Well, could you not do one way, but for residents, it can be open? You could do it that way too, right? Am I correct?
Not on a one-way.
No.
You can't have, he can't have the residents going down a one-way street.
We do like we did Burnett and Eames Street, where certain hours of the day, time restricted access.
He said it's one way for everybody but the residents.
The residents could have access to it from both ways though, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No.
I thought you could.
Yeah, you'd have a problem with your hands there.
But
All right.
I can attest to the fact there's nobody on New
Shake-
Street
you
that
shook
has an
your head yes, though.
18-wheeler though, so they'll be able to make the turn at Chestnut and Haverhill, I suppose.
All right.
It's like, no.
So, what are the wishes of the board? Schedule a public hearing?
Schedule a public
Yeah.
hearing.
Well, I assume there's gonna be some meetings in between now and when we schedule this hearing. Who's taking the action to schedule those meetings with the residents, with internally, with our own staff, DPW, CPC, police, and so on?
We've
Who's-
reached out today. Tom has made a phone call, so we're hoping in the next couple of days to at least sit down and get an update as to where, what their feelings are, and from looks of it, it hasn't really changed much, so, but I know that there was some impact on some of the reaching out to the trucking companies, and, maybe that we need to revisit that again, and what I was speaking of as far as those other options, it's not an either or, it's something that maybe we can immediately do to see if that makes some sort of an impact while that process goes forward. Because I think you can always reverse that as
Sure.
well.
So we meet again on the 12th, but we're not gonna go that soon, I would assume.
I think if I'm reading the chief correctly, I think you're asking us to take a more measured approach here.
Exactly.
If we're
Yeah,
gonna
you're asking
try-
for more time, is what I'm thinking.
If we're looking at some of the alternatives you're suggesting, let's try those first, see what the mitigation is, and see if it satisfies people
I certainly
before we
don't,
go and.
I certainly, I'm in this late into the game, and a lot of work has been done, and I'm sure the residents are here for a reason. I'm not looking to go backwards. I'm just looking at, maybe there are other alternatives rather than just a truck exclusion, because we're just gonna be pushing the problem to a different area. And I really think that if we at least put a little bit of thought into maybe the raised sidewalks, I know before this week it was never brought up. I don't know if it's the answer. The one way was just brought up this week. And these are things that we never thought of before. So, I'd certainly like to talk to them. We reached out today and I wanted to speak before the meeting, so I wouldn't just be speaking on behalf of the police department. But we're looking to solve the problem. And if solving the problem is the exclusion, then it is what it is. But if we can solve it by putting some other obstacles in place, so to speak, and it works, I think the residents would be happy at that point, but we don't know if it's going to work. So the long and short of it is we're.
So we meet, I think, in April. Our first meeting is April 2nd, I would assume, so is that enough time?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Just, it's less than a month.
Not March 6th, April 16th?
It's a holiday.
It's a holiday, so we would probably, why don't we just say our for our
Second meeting in April.
Yeah, second meeting in April.
I mean, how many of these raised things would be proposed? I mean, how are they spaced generally? See, I'm not that familiar.
What he's speaking of is a technique called traffic calming. That's like a raised crosswalk. There's
Right.
also, say you have a crosswalk, you basically have the road neck out, called neck downs. Basically make a bottleneck. So drivers tend to go slower, or you make the curbs, put in curbs, but make it narrower. It's various techniques, it's kind of a visual thing, so people slow down, because now the street's not as wide as it is, like New Street now, there's no curbs, I don't believe, on either side.
Well, I'm just thinking Chestnut Street in front of, McGuire Field and Moynihan. I mean, they got a pretty good running start there.
I was trying, sorry.
What are we applauding here?
I was pulling up the raised sidewalk for you.
Oh.
It's right here, but
Yeah,
Sounds
it
like
has
some
volume
video
to
that
it,
you
so
don't
we
want us
won't
to
do
see.
that.
Sounds like someone took out the bottom of their vehicle
Yeah.
on it.
So there are a variety of traffic calming techniques, they all have pros and cons, and they all cost money to do. One of the downside of a raised sidewalk is, kids do try to go over them and see how far they can go.
Right. There's some here.
Dukes of Hazzard,
You know,
those things.
And summer's coming, that traffic's gonna pick up. I'd rather move it along, and I don't think it's one path we're on. I think we can travel two paths. I don't wanna push it off any longer than our second meeting in April.
Yeah.
And I guess
Gentleman in the rear.
It's Mr. Foss.
Nate Foss, 127 Chestnut Street. I agree with Selectman Delaney. I think that we can simultaneously proceed with the public hearing and make the application to the state, while also working with the chief and the local officials along alternatives. If we're successful in achieving a truck exclusion, it doesn't mean we have to impose it. You know, we apply for it. We don't have to, correct me if I'm wrong, if you guys know, but I don't think we have to put the exclusion in. I think we should go after it. In fact, you know, we've spent $7,000 or $8,000 for this study. To stop short and waste the taxpayers' money without filing the application would be foolish. I think that was the intended purpose. That's what the voters voted on, and I think we should go through with it. At the same time, some of the alternatives, you know, there's been some results. I know that Sergeant Romeo contacted some of the trucking firms, and the truck counts from those trucks have gone down in the neighborhood. They were primarily from the post office. I can name them, but I won't. But nonetheless, I think that going forward with a parallel track is the way to handle this. And at the end, you know, I'm sure there'll be a decent outcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I see no reason not to, set a date for the public hearing.
Fine, and I'd like to get hear from the planning commission too, and school department and all the rest, but, to me, we need to do something, and if we have the opportunity, let's take advantage of it and
So are
explore
we
our
talking
options.
about April 16th?
That's a holiday according to.
That week, the second meeting, I guess.
Whatever our second meeting would
Suggest you
be.
meet the second week, which is at the 23rd,
Third week.
third week.
Okay. And we'll post it in advance. It's, maybe we can also send a letter out to the residents of Concord and,
23rd.
Okay? Further? All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is informational hearing on the forthcoming town meeting. Basically, by this time, I believe the warrants should be in everybody's hands.
We hope so.
I know there's one at my house.
Yeah, mine too.
So this is a one-article town meeting, special town meeting, and it's for the high school, middle school project. And it involves, requires a two-thirds vote because it involves bonding, and the sum is 107 million. Help me with the, you remember what the last?
078.
107,800,000+. So, this is an informational hearing. Anybody in the audience have any questions regarding the project? Yes, sir. Just come up to the podium, name and address.
Philip Zizek, 17 Sunset Avenue. Just wanted to see, I haven't heard in general, when you see public projects, a lot of times they go over budget. How has the planning been, knowing that it's not going to end up being $200 million in a few years?
Well, first of all, the town meeting vote will be for the amount of money that's to be expended on the project. You'd have to go back to the school building committee and the architect and the OPM, which is the owner project manager, and all the work that they've done over the past, how many months now?
Well, it's over a year now.
Right, and in the plan, there are contingencies to deal with. Obviously, there's always some unknowns and things like that, but they can't exceed that spending limit without coming back to town meeting. And I don't think anyone on that committee wants to ever come back to town meeting if this thing passes. Mr. Delaney is a member of the building committee, and I think he can probably answer the question or
Sure.
add to the answer.
Both the architect of the project as well as the OPM had their independent estimators estimate this job. And they got together and collaborated after they independently estimated the job. So we're very confident in that particular number. And there are contingencies built into it, as the chairman has said. So that's a solid number. We won't be coming back to the town to ask for any more money. As people that have viewed me here, as I sit here, I'll do the same thing as I sit on that committee. I will safeguard your tax dollars. You'll see what's gone on here in the last month or so in terms of particular budgets. I can guarantee you I'll do the same thing there. We won't be coming back to ask for another dollar.
What Sean didn't mention, too, is that as part of any bid package, there are alternates, there are subtraction alternates, and there are add-ons associated with, what comes in the bid. And then from that process, if the bids are low, there may be things that, are on the list that went out on the bid package that will be added, and if the bids are high, those things may be subtracted. I think this project, in working with the state, is like it's got more overseers on the project than any other project the town has taken on its own in the past. The Batchelder School was built under a total different set of rules, yet it was done due to the diligence of the building committee, on time and a little under budget, as I recall.
There's actually 3 reviews, right? Because the MSBA also does a review independent of the OPM and the designer. So there has been a lot of oversight from the financial perspective on this to make sure we're not building a Taj Mahal, which we're not. Absolutely not. And I have...
Well, I'll say this, no Newton North won't be built here, all right? That applies more aptly than a big dig, but there won't be a Newton North here in North Reading.
The town should take comfort in the level of oversight that's in the amount of work that's gone into the estimating of this project. When you can be rest assured, when we go to vote, when we go to town meeting on the 19th and we go to vote on the 24th, that what we vote on is we're done. We're good, we're prepared, and we have a good plan in place, we have the right people in place, and all that's left at that point is obviously finaling out the design, getting the bid packages in, and getting to work.
Mrs. Bailey?
You're trapped over there.
If I have...
New Street?
I live there, so I can go both ways. Marcy Bailey, 21 Duane Drive. Just to follow up on what Mr. Prisco said, I think the MSBA's oversight is important. And in fact, there was just an article in the Globe this week about Wellesley High School that was finished under the same program, well within budget. And I think that there's a good record under this new state program of schools being within budget. I would like for the Board of Selectmen to address 2 things. One thing that we've been hearing about a lot is concern that if town housing values in town are maintained or increased because